Hi everyone. Today we're going to be working on quilting using your long arm, kind of like a big embroidery machine. So what I'm going to be doing is something that in the embroidery world is called in the hoop project. And in the hoop project, the entire little wall hanging that I'm doing is going to fit into the quiltable space. So in between the two rollers and in this little short space. So because my long arm isn't very long in my filming studio, I'm going to be doing something that's 6 feet, sorry. I'm going to be doing something that is 6 inches tall, 20 inches wide, just a little wall hanging, right? But you can do this much wider if you have a wider throat machine. I'm on an APQS Lenny right now. I think I have about 16 inches in my quiltable space when there's nothing up on my roller. So I would want to be keeping it like smaller than that. So I'd say like 14 inches maybe would be a good size on a Lenny. If you're going up to a Lucy, Millie, Freddie, you can do even wider, right? So like 18 inches, let's say, probably wider than that. If I was on my Millie 30, I know I could go upwards of 20 inches, probably close to 21 inches wide. And then the length of your project, if you're keeping the aspect ratio the same, it's long and skinny, right? So if I went to 12 inches, it would be 40 inches long. If I, went to 9 inches, it would be 30 inches long, right? So just so that you kind of understand what we're looking at, okay? I know my screen's kind of hard to see right now. I'm going to be doing this on my long arm and showing you the screen, but I'm probably going to also do it on my desktop so that I can do some screen capture and you can see it a little bit clearer down in the corner too. So if they're not exactly synced up, that's what's going on. I'm actually filming it at 2 different times. So on this, I am going to be using Select and Sew. Well, first of all, you need to go and download the pattern. The pattern is available on my website for free. So if you go up to my website and you look at free Quilt Path designs, there is one called AC Tree Wallhanging. That is going to be the pattern that we're going to use for this. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Select and Sew. And I am having some touchscreen problems, so I have to get it just right to get in there. And I may be going to find a mouse to do this. We all have those days, right? Come on, baby. There it goes. Okay, so it's going to ask me to set the safe area. That's how I know I'm in there where I need to be, right? So I'm going to set it kind of on my top of my batting just so that I know where I am, and I went under my batting again. So I'm just trying to go up, and I'm just going to go back to where I have this other piece of quilt top or practice cloth going. So I would go all the way over there. Then I'm going to go all the way over to my batting on the other side. Okay, I am in simulation mode, so let's not do that. I can tell that because the screen came up, so I'm just going to close out of here, hit the X again. I'm just hitting the X all the way through, but I want to connect to my long arm, so I am going to tell it I want to connect, make sure my green flip switch is on, and tell it I want to proceed to connect, and then get it connected. Whoops, didn't mean to do that, sorry. Now it's telling me that my long arms can move. There we go, now I'm connected. Happens to all of us though. Sometimes it's important for you to know that things like that happen to even those of us that have done this a lot, right? That I'm not paying attention sometimes, and I actually had my USB out a minute ago to move the pattern over, and I did not fix that situation. So it happens to all of us though. So let's see if I can get this to go again. There we go, now it's opening. Okay, so we're gonna try again. Top left. Bottom right, and I know you can't see me moving my long arm right now. Okay. Okay, so, and then the pattern I'm gonna choose, I dropped into a folder, so it's AC Tree Wallhanging, right? And it is going to bring this up in whatever you used last. So I am going to change my I'm going to change my placement settings to 1 point. And then I want to set up off the top left corner, which is also your start point, but I'm going to change to corner just so that you can, you know how I'm setting this. And if you were using a pattern that did not start in your top left corner, how you would do that. Now, the other thing I'm going to want to do is it comes in at a size different than what I want to quilt it. I want to quilt this at 6 inches tall. It was actually designed to be 6 by 20 inches for this project. And you can see it's going to take a good part of this, my design surface, right? Or my quiltable surface inside my frame. So it just looks like a pattern. That's all it should look like at this point. I am going to take my long arm and I'm going to move it back and set it about where I want it to start in my quiltable area. So I'm going to tell it this is where I want it to start. So I'm going to mark that and you're going to see it jump up to the top left-hand corner. Now, I'm going to be working on this. I'm going to be cutting things. I'm going to be doing all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to move it forward a little bit. I just don't want to reach that far back on my long arm if I don't have to. So I would move it over towards myself a little bit, right? Towards the front of the machine a little bit to make it so that I'm not reaching far as back. I'm not using my whole quiltable space, so there's no reason for me to be all the way back in the back of this. The other thing that I'm going to need to do is I am going to sew a line on this so that I can see where I'm going. And all of my colors today are green, brown, black, right? And my background is going to be black. But I am going to be using blue thread. And the reason that I'm doing that is that, first of all, it's what's loaded on my long arm. But secondly, I want you to be able to see the quilting lines a little bit better than you would be able to if I was using green thread, which would be what I would typically use on a project like this, would be one of the colors that's actually in my design. But in this case, I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm going to quilt with what we have, okay? So I am going to go needle down, needle up real quick, and I'm going to bring my blue thread up to the top. And all I'm doing right now is making sure I really do have a bobbin installed on this long arm because honestly, I haven't checked yet. I'm going to tell it I'm going to quilt. I'm going to quilt the area that it is right now. And then I need to check some settings. I'm going to go up to the settings at the top. And the settings that I want to make sure I have set for this project is I do want my pause at trim lines on. And I'm going to set my tie-offs a little bit more than I would normally do. So I'm going to set it to 4. Typically I do 2 to 3 tie-offs, but in this case I am doing sewing lines, or the piecing lines, and I want to make sure that those piecing lines tack off and hold well. So I'm going to set it a little bit longer. Now, hopefully on my other computer or my other system, I've got a picture of the colors of the fabric that I'm using. I'm using 8 different green fabrics. I am a batik girl, so I am going to keep using my batiks. I have a variety of green batiks that I'm going to use for my tree. And then for my tree trunk, I'm going to use this one that's kind of, it's kind of a light bluish green and brown. So this is what I'm going to use as my brown fabric for my trunk. My fabric is actually still all packed away from me setting up my studio, and I was able to get the green bend, so I grabbed something that looked brown out of that bend, guys. So that's what I'm doing on this one. So to start out with, I'm going to get all of these off of here real quick, and then we are going to start piecing, and I am going to need that one pretty quickly, so I'm going to keep it right there. Okay. And I'm also going to need, so the things that I'm going to need for this, obviously I'm going to need my long arm, I'm going to need a pair of scissors, which is actually what I'm searching for madly. Okay, pair of scissors, these will work. Not the best scissors in the world, but they will work. And then I'm going to need some thread, some batting, some backing, which I've already preloaded, and this is going to be quilted sideways in my frame, right? Because I need the whole project to be in the frame, okay? So I'm going to start out by going to rock this down maybe if I can. I want all eyes down on my needle, as weird as this sounds. I think, yes, I want all eyes down on my needle so that we can see what's going on. We've got 3 cameras going today, so hopefully we'll be able to get something on here. Okay, and you'll see me walking in and out of the frame, guys, but that's just part of doing what we're doing today. Okay. Okay, so I actually have already brought my needle up. I've got everything set the way I want on my settings. I'm just gonna tap OK on that. And then I'm gonna tap sew. Because I have pause at trim lines set, it is gonna stop at the end of every line in here. So you don't wanna optimize this. You do want those trim lines to happen. And you are going to just go in the order that you've got. So let me look at this real quick and make sure that they are going in the order that I expect them to. Okay, and they're not. Gonna stitch number 1 first, which it's supposed to do. But the next thing that I want it to stitch is the trunk. And right now the top of the trunk is number 14. So number 1, with the yellow circle, means that will be stitched first, right? And then right now, number 2 is at the top of this tree line that I'm highlighting yellow. So that would stitch second. But that's actually one of the last things I need to stitch. I need to stitch what is currently numbered as number 14 first. So the one that I keep hovering over and it's turning yellow, that needs to be done second. The first thing we're going to do is the outline and then the number second. The way that we change that is to go down to the bottom between the minus and the plus sign, and we change the number there to the number we want it to be, so number 2 in this case, and then click on the little yellow circle for 14, and it will swap the 14 and the 2, right? So that's perfect. We then need the bottom part of the tree, which will end up being the right side of the tree, to be number 3. If you look back down between the minus and the plus sign at the bottom, it is already auto set to 3. So what I need to do is tap on the number 13 and it will change to 3. Quilt Path is going to auto forward that number for you as it's going. See, it says 3. We're going to go up to the 13, tap on it, and it's going to become number 3. Now, the next thing we need to do is do the diagonal line between the trunk and the first color of green. And that has 2 numbers on it. It has number 10 and number 11, and you do need both of them. One is a placement line, and the other one is the sewing line. And I know because I designed this pattern that the 10 needs to be number 4 because it's the shorter line, right? So we are going to come up and tap on the 10 and change it to a 4 because that auto forwarded to 4 for me at the bottom. And then we will go over to the 11 and tap on that and it will become 5. Okay, and we're going to work our way up this tree looking at the seam lines between the green. So the next one up, coming between green 1 and green 2, currently says, I think that's a 9. We are going to we want to change that to 6, change the next one to 7. The one between number 3 and number 4 is correct, as is the next one. So we're going to go up until we get to number 10, right? And tap on the 11, it becomes a 10, right? And then this one needs to actually be 12, right? You see where I'm going with this, right? And then we need to look at how the tree needs to be pieced at the end. And it does need to be pieced with the shorter top part of the tree being done first. That is currently 14. We need that to be a 13. It already says that between the minus and the plus sign. So we can go up and tap on the 14 and that will correct the stitching order. You can also change the direction that things are being quilted in. So right now, number 13 is being stitched from the bottom left corner to the top of the tree. If I wanted to quilt the other way, I hover over it until it turns yellow and then tap on it and it will reverse the stitching line for me. So now it's stitching from the top of the tree down, right? So I can affect both the order that things are stitching and the direction that things are stitching with Optimize. What I do not want to do in this case is take out any of these blue jump stitches because we are using those to be able to change colors of fabric as we're going up this quilt. So do not touch remove all. Don't remove the jump stitches. You're actually ready to say okay on this and quilt. Okay. Okay, so let me show you this for just a second. Okay, so you don't want to optimize this a whole lot, but what you're going to see when you go into your, if you went into optimize, it's something like this. So the whole idea behind this is that you want it to quilt in an order. So I have 2, 3, these two lines are 4 and 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? 13 and 14 are the orders that we're going to sew this in. And you want all of those jump stitches because we are going to be changing fabric in between some of these movements to make sure that our quilting, you know, we can quilt basically foundation piece inside of here, okay? So let's go back down so that you know what we're doing. The first thing I want to do is I want Quilt Path to sew the rectangle on the bottom so that I can see what I'm doing, okay? So I've got my thread up. I'm going to say okay on this screen just so that I make sure that I'm doing the right thing, and I'm going to hit sew. And I kind of twist my thread around my finger when I'm doing this just to put a little bit of pressure on it. Let it sew. There's those tack offs I just did. Okay, and I'm going to put ignore the message. And the reason is that I don't have my thread break sensor installed here, so we're just going to hit sew again, and it's going to keep sewing. And all I really need to do is keep my batting straight, all right? Make sure that there's no bumps in the batting. Okay, so there's my space that I am going to be designing into, basically. So the first thing that I need to do is take my brown material, right? Take the brown material, or what I'm calling brown, and I am going to want to put it down on the surface of my quilt. Now, I'm hoping I got this long enough. We're about to find out, but what I'm going to do is tell it, I want to move to next. Before I do that, I'm going to go to the toolbox. Maybe, there we go, toolbox, release my carriage. And I'm going to cut the start and end points at this point. I'm going to cut everything, right? So that all my thread is ended at the top of my quilt. Okay, now I can tell it I want to move to next. Just need to make sure I keep my arm of my long arm up where it's not going to hit. Right? So that's the place it's going to start sewing the next time, right? And I know that I'm going to want about 1/4 of an inch on both sides, and I'm pretty sure this is long enough. But if I wasn't, what I would do is hit trace, right? Because I want to find out if this is going to be long enough. So I can hit repair pattern and do closest stitch, right? And when I do that, I'm going to show you another trick too. I'm just doing a placement line, and I need to be somewhere on this the line on the top. So I'm going to actually release my carriage again real quick, because I want to make sure that I'm on the line that I want to stitch. I need to find out if it's long enough up here, right? So I'm going to release my carriage and bring it up a little bit, and then do closest stitch. And like I said, the reason I'm doing this is I want to see if I actually made this little piece long enough, right? So I know I can start it closer to the edge down here because it doesn't need to really sew off the edge. Then I can hit trace, right? So if I hit trace forward, it's going to bring me up so that I can see where this is going to actually fall. Okay, and that's the drag line that's going to go across. Okay, so I can hit stop because I know that I'm close enough, right? And then the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and release my carriage again, because what I need to do is go back to the beginning of that line and come over here, go up into my material just a smidge so that I can close this stitch again. And then I'm going to trace back by 1 until I get back to the line. And there are the reason that this particular tablet is here is because I know I'm having touchscreen problems on it, so I don't really want it to be, there it went, that time it took it. I don't really want it to be at the showroom anymore. So yeah, you're going to see me fighting it a little bit. Okay, I went one too far, and that's fine. And then I can do trace forward 1. There we go. Right? So sometimes you got to play with it a little bit to get it exactly where you want it to go when you want it to be there. That's not a problem as long as you understand why you're doing it. It's fine. It's nothing is going on, right? So I'm going to hit sew again. Okay, well I broke my bobbin thread. So I'm not ready to move back. I need to repair pattern again. And I'm going to go backwards. I'm just going to hit closest stitch here, which is going to lock me onto the same line. And then we're going to trace backwards. Maybe, or trace 1, whichever one I can get to work first. I actually felt my bobbin thread break that time. I should have stopped when I felt it, but I didn't, right? Okay, bring it out again. There we go. Let's try this again. I may not have enough bobbin thread. Okay, and that's what happens when you try to do things left-handed and you're right-handed. I just threw it across the thing on my long arm, but I'm going to step across in front of this camera real quick and get it where I need it to go. So there we go, right? So now I know that this is going to just jump over and tack down the other one. I can just say move to next. It'll move forward, right? I can hit sew. And have it move back to the beginning. Okay, I'm gonna need to figure out what's going on with my bobbin, because I wouldn't want this to go smoothly or anything. That would be ridiculous. Okay. Close the stitch. Okay, so there's my bobbin thread and my top thread. I'm gonna just hold it this way and hit sew again and see if I can get it to work through this one little section. Okay, gotta love when it doesn't actually tack off for you, but okay, we're gonna go with it. Okay, and then I would cut threads again, right? Now, the other thing I need to do is I need to trim the excess off of this. So I'm gonna be looking at where my pull line is across here, just kind of peeling this back this way and rough cutting a 1/4 inch, okay? Very carefully pulling it back. You do not want to actually move this in your quiltable space, right? And then the next thing I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna walk around this way, it's a little harder to do stuff like this with a camera involved in your world. If you ever want to find out what that really feels like, yeah. So I sewed these two down. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna wanna do is then sew the black down to them. But I wanted to sew these down first to show you one way to do this, which is to quilt the lines and then back up and then sew the black fabric down to it. So that's what I'm gonna show you next. You can also, once you know where it is, just put the black fabric and the blue fabric together, right? Sew this side down, flip the back fabric over, hit next, right? Flip the black fabric over, and then sew this line down, and you can do the same thing, okay? So you don't have to do this first. I was trying to show you that you can get guidelines if you want. What you're gonna find as I move through this is I don't use guidelines. So I am going to go to back to placement. Oops. I'm actually going to go to quilt again because didn't mean to go back to the placement. And I'm going to tell it I need to go to repair pattern. And I'm once again going to do closest stitch on this line somewhere, right? So I'm going to do closest stitch, right? Which is going to put me back on that line again. Nudge back, whoops, not budge back. Trace back 1. This is a lot easier to do if your tablet is working. There it went, that's where I want it. And now I need a piece of black fabric. So I have a big sheet of black fabric that I'm going to be using to do this. So I'm just gonna cut up a piece that I feel like is gonna go on this side. So width of the fabric seems like it's gonna work for me, so I'm gonna do a big hunk off of it. I'm just gonna rip it, right, that I think will fit on that side. And then I'm gonna need another piece to fit on the other side, right? So I'm literally using my scraps to do this with because that's the beauty of this, right? You're gonna do right sides down. I'm using Kona cotton, so it doesn't matter. So all I need to do is cut some of these threads so I'm not dealing with them. My long arm's locked in place. So I'm gonna release my carriage, move it out of the way for a second so I can cut some of this, right? Line this up. So the least amount of white is showing on it, because that's the problem right now, is I have white showing on it, right? And then I'm going to come back over, get close to where that line is. Okay, so I'm going to hit repair pattern, closest stitch, which should line me back up on my line again. Not quite, so I'm going to release my carriage. I wasn't far enough in when I did it. Oh, I need to be up here, that's why. Okay, I'm gonna hit closest stitch, and then I will trace back till I get to the beginning of this line, trace back by 1, 1 more. Okay, that's gonna be close enough, so I'm gonna hit needle down, needle up, and pull my bobbin thread to the top. And then I'm gonna hold these two and hit sew. Okay, so, and this is when I'm going to start my foundation paper piecing type idea, right? Where I'm going to be flipping things back on the long arm to piece on the long arm. So I am going to hit the toolbox, release my carriage, right? And other than being able to place this very accurately, I have not found a reason to really need to do this, sew the shape first. So I will do it when I do this diagonal line, just because I don't know where to cut on this line. And I'll explain that to you in a second. I still need to cut this one, so I'm going to cut this real quick. Right? Match my, yep, I want this to be my right side. And because I'm using white batting, I am going to be having to use a, you know, well, I'll probably just wash it to get it off, but or a lint roller, right? Or wash it. So yeah, and I'm aware of that. So I'm going to do the same thing where I come to the start point of this one, which is actually going to be up here somewhere, right? So I need to find my little line. Okay, it's going to be like right there, right? And then I would move to next. Right? And it's moving to where I expect it to. And I would pull this one up. Right? Hold these with this hand, get this where it's not going to hit my wrist, and hit sew. Okay, so now we have our tree done, or our trunk done, right? So what I'm going to do is flip this back over so that I've got my 2 pieces of black fabric in here. And my next line is going to be a diagonal line. So I am going to let that one sew. Okay, so I'm going to go to move to next. And I forgot to end my stitching, which stuff like this happens, guys, right? So I can just go underneath and cut it, not a big deal, right? Do needle down, needle up. Grab my thread, right? And I would sew across this next line. So I'm gonna hit sew, and this is gonna get me where my sewing line is going to be for this diagonal line. Okay, and it doesn't go all the way across, and that's fine. The next one will. So I'm going to release my carriage. Cut that. Okay, and then I'm going to get between the camera again. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now the next thing I need to do is I need to cut that diagonal line. So I want to zoom in and hope that I can do this and that you're going to be able to see past me. Hold on just a second. I am going to move this chair out of the way that is underneath my long arm. My saddle stool's under my long arm, so I'm going to get it out of the way for us. And I'm going to try to get you guys a lot closer, okay? Maybe. We'll see how this works for us. Okay, so if I bring it in like that, I can see what I'm doing a little bit more. And I'm going to get long arm in the way during when I'm doing this, but hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing on one of these 2 cameras, one of these 3 cameras, right? So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to bring that up and out of our way. I may have to bring it back down in a second to do needle up, needle down. We'll see if I can do it on the other side though. So what I want to do is then cut this at that 1/4 inch line. Now I'm trying to pick up the next layer of fabric and get it too. And you can see when I'm doing this, I am not really manipulating where the fabric is or where the batting is inside of my quiltable space. I'm trying really hard to leave this so that it is so that this isn't moving. Nothing is moving inside my frame, right? Okay, so that can get cleared off. I'm trying to get nasty out of your way too, so you guys aren't seeing as much. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is put a piece of fabric down for my first tree level. And I am gonna be using fabric that's bigger than I need because I'm a little worried about making sure that things are going to fit in the space I need them to fit into. So I can give you some rough measurements, and I will definitely measure this when we get done so that I can give you some rough measurements about the sizes you would need of scraps. But I am just hacking a relatively big sheet of fabric off of a batik, right? And we're gonna put it down and see how it goes. If it doesn't work, we'll cut it off and do it again. Okay, so I'm gonna have this big thing, which when I set it down here, right, and I flip it up, I mean, it's going to cover a big area on this. I am gonna wanna move it this way, right? So I don't need to cover as much on the top side of this as I do on the bottom side, right? So I don't need the fabric to go as far this way. Once it gets to here, it's not gonna be in the area at all. And I just wanna have a good amount of fabric that I think it's going to clear the next little tree that I'm doing. When we get done, I'll drop a ruler down on this so that we can get some measurements. But this is the first time I've done this. I've done projects like this on my long arm before, but this is the first time I've quilted this tree, and I'm doing it with you on a video. So here we go, guys. Right? And then I'm looking to see where it's gonna start, and I can tell that by the jump stitch on my screen. It is going to start down here somewhere. So I'm trying to get it, ooh, okay, so can't have my long arm there because we are stopping. It's actually this one that's stopping it, not that one. Okay, and I know that I need to hit move to next, right? Oh. I lied to you, it's starting on the other end. We're gonna be just fine with wherever it starts, to be quite honest with you. I'm going to needle down, needle up, and I'm, you get so used to doing it with one of your hands, and I am very much, at this point, right-handed on that button. So I'm gonna hit sew, and I'm gonna very carefully hold this until my long arm goes over it, and then I'm gonna let it go, right? Because I don't wanna sew a finger in a video, that would be really bad. Okay, awesome. So that is now sewn completely to the edge, and I can hit my release carriage. A lot of release. You will be releasing carriage a lot on this project, guys. That's just how it's going to be. So let me see if I can get this. I'm going to get this handle over so I don't have to reach up as far to get things out. So I released my carriage, needle down, needle up, right? Get them together. Okay, I just had those scissors. They're behind me. Oh, it's been a while since I've shot videos on the long arm, guys. Sorry about this. Okay, there we go, right? So I have this, and the next thing I'm gonna need to do is flip this up, right? And I'm gonna come over, and guys, that's why you use matching thread, okay? Because when I pull it up, it's not over. But I could, if I saw that in real life, what I would do is just flip this back down, right? And tack down next to it. So I must have had my finger down on the long arm, and that is my stay stitch line, so I can actually pick that out later and it'll be fine, which I will probably do instead of trying to figure out what's going on right now. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is move to next again. Okay, so this is where it's going to sew next. I'm going to need another piece of fabric. Okay. So I want to look and see, I'm going to, you know what? I'm just going to do this and see what happens. Because this is not a very thick one. Looking at it, it's going to be really thin. I'm going to keep this where it is, and I'm just going to hit sew, and we're going to see what happens. So I'm going to set down my next piece of fabric, and I'm going to hit sew. Right? Okay, and I've got that one. And then I would release my carriage again. Get my thread to the top. Right? Go back and get my scissors that I keep setting down behind me. Right? And then the next thing I need to do is cut these at 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to come in here and kind of hack them off at 1/4 inch. Matter of fact, I'm going to move my long arm out of the way. Right? Because then I can kind of manipulate it a little bit better. I'm using craft scissors instead of sewing scissors. I would suggest sewing scissors for this, guys. It would make my life easier, but right now, I'm okay with this, right? Okay, so now I'm gonna put this up, right? And I'm gonna bring my long arm close again. And I'm gonna hit next. Okay, so this is the top of this next line. So I'm gonna grab another piece of fabric. We're gonna one would think I would have cut the fabric first, but I didn't do that. So, okay, and if I need to, I will trace, but I don't think I'm going to need to because, to be honest, I can look on my screen and see this is going to need to go down a little bit, right? Do needle down, needle up. Okay, so you can, if you need to, sew the straight line across just the first piece of fabric, then repair pattern, come back to the beginning of this line, right? Do closest stitch and sew it a second time, if that makes you feel better. But I also want to speak to my girls that are a little more loosey-goosey, don't feel like they need to do stuff like that. Because that's more of where my heart is, right? I'm gonna bring this up so I have both of them together. Then I'm just gonna hit sew again, guys. It's either at this point gonna work or it's not, right? If I'm using really big sheets of fabric when I'm doing it, which I am, when I measure this, you're gonna see that I'm gonna need like 3-inch pieces of fabric, and I'm putting like big 6 by, you know, 4 or 5-inch pieces of fabric down. I could pick that up so it's not as messy. I'm a messy person at the moment as far as quilting is, or as far as my long arming goes. And I'm gonna need my scissors again, because I'm gonna do the same thing, right? Cut these together. Or let's start out by releasing our carriage, so toolbox. Release our carriage so that we can get them away from each other. Bring my thread up to the top so I can cut it too. And then I'm going to cut the material on the top of the quilt again. Then I'm going to flip this over, right? Now, this one kind of scares me a little bit. I'm wondering if I got it too close down here. And that's part of, you know, if you're going to just fly by the seats of the pants, sometimes those kind of things happen to you. So I'm going to move next and see what happens. And it's going to come down to this end. Okay, so I have a choice. I can sew down this one and see if it's going to sew all the way to the edge of this, or I could trace it. Let's do sew it so you can see a different way to do this. So if I do needle down, needle up, would be my safe way of doing this, right? As opposed to my fly by the seat of the pants way of doing it. And then I hit sew. I think it's going to be okay, but we want to make sure. Oh, it's going to be fine, guys. Look how far that is in. Okay, so then I would, you know, cut that off because we want our threads to stay clean, right? I can then, I don't want to move to next, so I want to repair my pattern real quick, release my carriage, right? I know exactly where this is going to start this time, so it's going to be easy. So I can do needle down, needle up, right? Oops. Needle down, needle up. My bobbin actually broke. Okay, so we're gonna fix that too. Oops, sorry about that. And then I can either trim this for the next one, or I can do that same thing I was doing before where I'm guessing. Now this next one is wider, right? So I know I'm gonna need a bigger sheet of fabric. Okay, so this one's gonna go, and I know that on this side over here, I need it to be long, guys. So when I set this down and I sew it, and I'm gonna do this just because it's gonna be easier to sew on this side, I'm gonna overlap this by 1/4 inch, and when I fold, I need the bulk of the fabric to be over here, right? So this piece is much wider than I need, which is fine. It makes it so that it's not as much of a risk for me, right? Put this close to where I need it to start again. Tell it I want to do closest stitch, right? Okay, and it's going to be on this line that I need it to be on. It looks like it's taken 1 stitch, so I'm going to go backwards 1. Whoop, didn't want to do that. Now it's going all the way back down to the bottom, or to the previous row. So I'm going to go forward 1, so that we're starting where we expect to start. Needle down, needle up, right? Bring my bobbin thread to the top and hit sew. Okay, and then I am going to do toolbox, release my carriage, right? Bring my thread up to the top. See where I'm going with this, right? It's very repetitive what I'm doing. Now, I mean, this is a pretty simple project, right? Which is one of the reasons we can do it in the hoop. I mean, the cool thing is that you can do these huge, my husband and I are getting ready to buy an RV, and my plan is to do one of these. It's probably 40 to 60 inches tall, so that when we are full-timing in our RV in several years from now, it's not happening anytime soon, right? When my husband retires, and he still has probably 15 years to work, maybe not quite that long, but we can use this as like a Christmas tree that we can pin either ornaments that we're buying while we're out on the road to, or maybe just get pins from national parks and put on it, right? Because it's not truly Christmassy, I could literally leave this hanging all the time in my RV. Because it's not Christmassy, right? It's just a pine tree if I wanted to. And then I could have it just having some national park pins on it, which I think would be really cute inside the RV, okay? So now we have the next one is gonna come up here somewhere when it stitches, and I'm gonna want another piece of fabric. You guys have got this another piece of fabric thing down, right? So this time I'm going to use maybe a little darker piece of fabric again. I really did not plan how I was going to do this. I just picked fabrics I liked and then was like, okay, well, when I'm placing it, I'm just going to do this organically, and I'm kind of going back and forth between, you know, light tones and medium and dark tones, right, as I'm piecing things. More solid batiks and more batiks that aren't so solid, right? Okay, so I'm ready to hit next again. So move to next. And we're going to do another piece. And I just need to decide what I want the top to be for this batik. This one's not going to matter at all. Okay, and this one is going to sew downward at a slant again. So like you can see, these are teeny weeny little pieces at this point that I'm putting in here. And I'm hoping I've got that on the right slant. I think I do. If I do it straight, it'll be fine. You know what? I think it's going to be fine. I'm looking at the screen to see how it needs to slant. It does slant down quite a bit, so we're going to say it's okay. And I forgot to bring my thread up. It's most likely going to be okay. It looks like it's stitched, so we're going to call it okay. Oops. Those kind of things happen, right? And we are going to do the same process again of cutting our thread, right? Cutting the fabric, cutting the thread, and getting our scraps out of our way. So that one's going to go up, and then this one's going to need to go that way. Okay, I'm trying to make sure I have enough fabric in this little piece that I like. Oops, forgot to release my carriage, so we're going to do that real quick. And weirdly, my release carriage button is working for some reason right now. So thank you, Quilt Path, for playing nice today. Get them up onto the top. Right? And then the next one is going to need to go this way. And I don't think it matters which way is right on my fabric, so I'm going to hit move to next. And it's probably only going to move up that far, right? Because it's teeny. Okie dokie. Put this under. It's slanting back some. Maybe not that much. I'm going to say that's how far it's slanting back. It's probably not right. Hit sew. And I'm going to, in this case, I want to hit move to next before I do this, because I just want to make sure that I got this long enough in this case. Oh, way long enough. See? This is a teeny weeny piece of fabric. This really is a scrap that I'm putting on here, but that's going to go into there just fine. So I'm going to break this, and I'm going to hit the release carriage real quick. Right? Okay, because I can always come back here if I'm not sure where it is and just do move to start point and go again, right? So this isn't, there's no harm or foul to this. It's going to work, it's going to be easy. Okay, and I just did something kind of stupid down here, so I'm going to fix it real quick. Okay, so I accidentally pulled that line out. I can see where the line's supposed to be, so I'm just going to bring my thread back up real quick. Where I want it to go, I'm going to go back to repair pattern, and I'm going to go to closest stitch, and I'm going to sew this again. Okay, grab that. So am I stressing about this? Absolutely not. There's nothing to stress over with this one. Pretty sure you're not going to be able to have an overhead view anymore if that's what I've been doing, because we are right over, the long arm is right over us at this point. And I'm just kind of talking as I'm doing things at this point, because, you know, that's part of doing videos, guys. Okay, so there's that one. Get this out of the way because I'm not going to need it. I'm going to move to next again. And I'm getting up towards the top of my tree, so my pieces are going to get really, really small. I mean, you can tell the stitch line on this one is only, you know, about that much. So this next one's going to be really small, and it's not going to flip up as high. So I am going to use a really small piece of fabric I have left over from a batik I absolutely love, that is unfortunately, you know, about to be out of my stash because I have about 6 more inches of this batik. So that's what I got, but it's going to go in my tree. So I'm going to hit sew. Okay, and this is the second to the last one I have to do. So I'm going to release my carriage real quick to a toolbox, release carriage, go away, come back, right? Go back into the same hole. Now I've got this whole thing wrapped around. It's going to be fine though. Down, up, and away, right? And then I can cut that at the surface of the quilt, which I would need scissors to do. Trim this, which I trimmed the one that I was trying to save the batik. I got pretty close to the right size. So I'm just going to trim this one, and then I'm ready to flip this one up, right? Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to have is one more little teeny weeny diagonal line and one more little teeny weeny piece of fabric. So yay. And it's not going to need to be very big. Bring this back over to here, which it's going to start on this side now, and that's fine. And bring it down and up so I have my needle, my thread up close to where I need it, right? And then I'm going to do this again. I'm going to hit sew. We're going to see if I can do it without making a mistake this time. Guys, I'm kind of glad that that happened because, first of all, I want to show you my life isn't charmed, right? So the fact that I'm good at using Quilt Path is not because I live a charmed life. I am able to get the program to do anything I want it to do because I'm tenacious, right? That's a big difference. And there's nobody out here showing me how to do this stuff, right? I needed to do a project for APQS and was like, let's do it. I can do this on my embroidery machine, which means I can do it on Quilt Path, guys. And I really do feel that way, and I think that way, so it's easy for me to be able to figure out what I need to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit move to next, which is gonna hopefully move this up to here. Maybe? Oh, no, it's going the wrong direction. So I'm gonna hit stop. It's okay. I'm just gonna go back to placement. Hit quilt again, and then I want this big long line to be number 2 again. So I just made a mistake and didn't put it in the right direction. So I want to reverse number 2, or change it to, I'm gonna change it to number 1, and change that one to number 2. Okay. So number 1 is now starting over here, and say okay. Okay, did it freak me out? No. Okay, so I'm going to move this to start point. So toolbox, move to start point. Okay, and this is the intersection of the 2 points at the top of the tree. So my next piece of fabric needs to be able to flip from here over that far, and also needs to be able to be as long as the point down here. And it's going to be a black piece of fabric. So I'm going to take another scrap of black fabric. And this one is going to be much longer because it was part of a backing, and you're going to see it's got white all over it too, right? Now, this piece of fabric does need to go all the way to this top corner too, right? So I'm going to put my fabric down here, and then I'm going to look over here, right? And I can kind of get my diagonal that I need to quilt. So it needs to go to right here. So I'm going to need a diagonal that looks kind of like that, right? Going down this quilt, and I'm just going to kind of smooth it out. And I'm using scraps of fabric, and this is not a very big project, guys, so I'm just not going to stress out about a whole bunch of stuff, right? So I'm going to do this, put it down, make sure that I have enough that when it folds back, it's going to cover that, which it's going to more than do that when it folds over, right? Because it's going to grow in length. At least it better grow in length, or maybe shorter, depending on what I'm doing. I'm just going to bring my bobbin thread up. That would be great to do right now, Angela. Bring your bobbin thread up. That is not my top thread. Where's my top thread? There it is. Oop, it's underneath here somewhere. There we go. Now I have my bobbin and my top thread coming up through the hole. There we go. They're both there together now, right? Okay, so I've got those both together. Gonna put it around the finger I'm gonna be holding here, and I'm gonna start hitting sew. Okay, so now I am ready to sew my last thing diagonally all the way down the surface of this. So to be able to get up here, I would go ahead and do these now, and I'm going to tell you, since I found these scissors, these are the way to go. If you have these Karen K. Buckley serrated scissors, it makes this project so much easier than my craft scissors. I just, needed to get it filmed and was willing to do it. I don't need to go all the way to the bottom on this. I'll be able to get my scissors into the edge down here a little bit. Now, the first time you do this, I would suggest a dark backing, and the reason is you just don't see stuff, right? So the whole idea behind the dark backing for me is that I can do this and not have to worry about things being underneath each other. Now, this is not going to be long enough, guys. I was hoping it would be, but it won't. Although if I flip this out this way, right, I'll release my carriage again. A lot of releasing your carriage, guys. Come down to here, and I'm going to go down, up, pull it back out, sew the edge, or cut the thread, grab all the extra little do-me-the-flop-flotchies I have all over the place, right? And then I'm going to flip this back, and you're going to see I've got lots of extra material sitting on the edge of this. So I'm going to pull it down so I can see the edge of my project, which is way down here. And I am just going to hack off a big piece of this and see if I can get it to work on the other side. Not really trying to save fabric, guys. That's not really what I'm trying to do. Well, I guess I am kind of doing that, but the object behind this for me is to just get the project done. And this last seam that I've got here, this seam down here, when I sew everything down at the end, it's going to be the edge of my project, right? So it's going to be an inch in from where I am, guys. So this piece needs to be able to fit right here, right? And if I flip it over, it's going to be perfect, guys. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, same thing I just did as before. I am going to move to next. Right, and I know that's got a cover, so I'm gonna pull it this way a little bit. And this is gonna have to go all the way down to the edge of the fabric down here, right? So I've got the diagonal line, I can see it sitting there that I'm gonna need, so I can do needle down, needle up. And then hit sew. Hold that this way. It's only got to go that far, so we are fine. Okay, but guys, look. So I am done with this project. I can actually go finished back to placement because I know I'm done. Now the next time I go in there, right, if I want to sew around the edge after I get this part, these cut off, right, I can go back in here right? And sew around the edge of my fabric, and then it's ready to bind, right? I don't have to worry about binding it. So I'm going to flip this back, cut both of these, going down here, pick this one up, cut it too. You can see because I'm using black fabric, I don't have to worry about how neat this is, guys. If I was using white fabric, and I had green on the inside, I would be cutting the green shorter than the white so that it looked better, right? So I would be ghost cutting this a little bit in here, like that. Trying to hide the green like I did right there, right? But that is not such an issue at this point because you are seeing none of this when we get done. And then that. Okay, and now I'm on the edge. I'm outside of where I'm gonna actually be sewing in a second. So I'm gonna pick up all my edges again and try to get it clean for you. Okay. So that is the project right there, right? But the last thing I wanted to do is to actually sew around the edge for me so it's easier to bind. So I'm just gonna hit quilt again. Now every time I go into quilt, it reorders my optimization, right? So when I go back to optimize, I can see one is going all the way around the outside again, which is awesome. So if I say okay, and I tell it I want to move to my start point, it's going to move back up to this top left corner. Now, and I will say, in a perfect world, I would have used black batting and I wouldn't have all this batting situation going on. But I also knew that was going to be an issue before I started up, so I didn't stress about it. This isn't about stressing. This is about having a cute finished project that I can do in about an hour on my long arm, guys. Even shooting this, it's not taking me much more than an hour to do this. Okay, and I'll actually tell you how long in the main video it took me to actually shoot this and do this at the same time. So I'm gonna hit sew, and this time I'm gonna want my hands down here, but I'm also gonna want to make sure that I'm not getting near my hands, because what I'm doing is keeping my outer black fabric as flat as I can keep it as the long arm is sewing it down. And I just ran out of bobbin thread, so I'm gonna hit stop. I was hoping I would make it all the way around this quilt, but I didn't. And I have to think of where we put the bobbins last night. Aha, she says. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, guys. I have a black Magna Glide bobbin, so that is what we are switching to. We were doing silver before. It's gonna be fine. So I'm gonna put this in here. I'm going to repair pattern, go release my carriage. So toolbox, come on baby, one more line. Release carriage, rock back to where I need it to start. I'm gonna start a little bit behind where I was. So needle down, needle up, and you're gonna see that I have a different color bobbin because it's what I have on hand. I'm at my filming studio in my house, I'm not at my showroom, and this is going to be the edge of the quilt. This is not going to be inside the quilt, so I'm just not gonna stress about it. I'm gonna hit closest stitch so that it's gonna start there. I'm gonna hit sew, and I'm gonna let it start quilting again. It doesn't even matter if it didn't have good tension on this part because all I'm doing is giving myself the place, the outside of the quilt, all right? Okay. Okay, and guys, that's it, right? I'm gonna take it off the frame, I'm gonna bind it. I'll leave this line in and I'll probably bind it right inside of it. But that's it. It's a quick, easy way to use your long arm. You just need to be using patterns that have jump stitches in them. That is the trick. And part of the idea with doing this particular project when I was thinking up was, how do I show you that jump stitches can be your friend? Right? And this kind of shows you a way that you would use jump stitches to your advantage. And that's the whole idea behind this. So my next thing I'm going to do is get this off, trim it down. Probably not going to put the binding on it right away, but I will get a picture of it so I can put it into the pattern. I can do that without actually binding it. And then I have to decide what I want to bind it with, but I think I want to choose one of the cool fabrics that's inside. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and there's probably going to be some voiceover on this as well. And I look forward to teaching you more. If you would like to have APQS do more projects like this, please tell us, comment on the video, and I can get the information to APQS. If you're on the APQS blog, or if you came out here from the APQS blog, comment on the APQS blog. Go up to Facebook and tag APQS and say, hey, we'd really like to have more Quilt Path projects, right? They don't know what you want them to do unless you ask them. And this would be true of both long arm quilting, free motion, learning how to use rulers, learning how to use your Quilt Path, any of those items. Tell APQS what's important to you, and then they can have a better chance of getting you what you're looking for. Hope you're having a great day, and I look forward to talking to you soon.